My name is Ryan Serena. I'm the owner and co-founder of Rogue Baseball Performance. We founded Rogue Baseball back in 2015. We've come a long way over the course of the last 11 years. Rogue Baseball was a vision that was quite a while in the making. Had been a part of some youth and high school baseball facilities and doing instruction, things like that. We just felt like there was a better way to do it. And we had a vision for trying to provide people with the most quality instruction and player development environment possible. So that's the genesis of Rogue. I grew up in Parker, Colorado. I graduated from Chaparral High School in 2006. Went on to play junior college baseball at Lamar Community College and then Division II baseball at Colorado Christian University. After my college playing days, I actually got into instruction while I was still in college. Coached our high school teams at Chaparral in the summer, got into doing lessons in the off season with my high school coach, actually in this very building that we're sitting in right now. So I've been doing it for a long time. I've gotten to do some pretty awesome things in baseball. I spent a year in 2013, 2014 coaching at the junior college level at Lamar. I worked with the infielders, with the hitters, and assisted with recruiting there. In 2022, I was hired by the Chicago Cubs as the minor league infield coordinator. It was a dream come true to work in professional baseball. I was never good enough to play at that level, but having the opportunity to coach and coordinate in professional baseball was a real treat. My role within the Cubs organization was to oversee the infield play for all the minor leaguers, so from AAA all the way down to the Dominican Rookie League, all of the infield work, all of our practice design, all of our evaluation methods were kind of under my purview, obviously in conjunction with the front office. So I gained valuable perspective at both of those levels, at the professional level, seeing the game with the best players in the world, but also coaching at the college level and understanding how that process works from the college coaching side. Both have been invaluable for how we build things here at Rogue, how we provide our guys with the best opportunity to get as good as they can and as many opportunities at the next level as we can. So what is the vision for the Rogue program? From the very beginning, our vision has always been to provide our guys with a comprehensive place where they can do everything. We haven't always been able to execute on that because of space and time limitations. With this new building and this new facility and this kind of new chapter for us, we feel like we're closer than ever to being able to provide that for our guys. We want guys that come in at 10 years old with their team and train with us. They come in with their dad when there's open cage space and get extra swings with us here. We want guys that spend some of their extra time doing individual sessions with us, right? And honing those skills so that when they are hitting with dad, they know what they need to work on. As they transition into high school, those hitting sessions with dad might turn into hitting sessions with teammates, and they're working into more of a group and self-driven aspect. Right. And then through that, they're playing on our team. So we're getting to watch them play the game. Right. That's going to help us, guide their training. Then when they do come train, we can provide them with really detailed, and player specific things that they need to work on. And then again, giving them the skills to be self-driven in this game so that when they do go to college and beyond, they know themselves as a player better than we know them as a coach. And if we can provide that from, again, age 10 all the way up through age 22, and they've been with us for those 12 years and we're their guys and we're their home base, like that's the ultimate vision for us. Not only does that help them as a baseball player, but man, is it rewarding for us as coaches to have seen a kid grow from a lot of times not a super talented 10-year-old, but bought into the system, understood how player development works and how the game works as you get older, and then getting to where they end up. There's nothing more rewarding, and that's really the heart of our vision. How do you see the program developing over the next 5 years? So over the next 5 years, I see our program developing in a lot of ways. One of our big pushes is for our youth program to grow. We've always worked with youth teams, independent for the most part. We've had several Rogue branded youth teams over the last couple years, but one of our big goals is to get them young. There's so much out there on the youth baseball side. We're working to get younger players into our system and scale that way. What a 9-year-old does and what an 18-year-old does is not the same. So we want to work to provide 9-year-olds with what 9-year-olds need, 12-year-olds with what 12-year-olds need, 15-year-olds with what 15-year-olds need, all the way up to 18-year-olds and even our college guys. So that's one of our biggest visions, is growing that youth program. And that way we've got guys that have been Rogue guys for 10 years and not just for 5 years. One of the other big visions for us is coaching coaches. We are very hands-on as a group. We love having guys come through our doors. We love coaching them personally. But the reality is that is a tiny fraction of the youth baseball and the high school baseball community in this area. And so a big push for us is, starting with our youth coaches and our high school coaches, is training our coaches really well. Here's what we believe. Here's how we teach. Here's why we teach those things the way that we do. And then scaling that up, right? If you have 2 or 3 coaches on each team that are able to guide 12 to 15 players in the proper way, in the way that we think is best for amateur baseball development, that's going to grow exponentially as well. So while we can't have our hands on every kid around here, we do want to have more impact on the coaches in our community through the platform that we have here at Rogue. What will it take from an everyday process standpoint to build the program you envision? A lot of work, and we're in the thick of it right now. Getting the youth stuff dialed in has been something kind of new for us. Usually we let everything happen and we see them in January. So we're, in the process of helping with tryouts, helping identify coaches and players that would be good fits for our program. So that's kind of what we're going through right now as we talk here in June. Just as a general thing, every single day we want to make sure that we're doing everything possible to help our players understand what it takes to get better. Right now, as we're in the summer with our high school guys, the goals are, when we have games and practices, to provide them with information that says, here's where you're good and here's where you're bad, and here's how we're going to work on getting better each day. We've talked a lot about having player plans, and that's something that we're working on building out within some of our systems, so that a player can look at that system and say, hey, my player plan says I need to do X, Y, and Z to get to where I want to go. So, that's where we start, is with the player, and making sure that they understand, where they stand. From a coaching staff standpoint, it comes down to building out systems that are scalable and building out systems that we can execute. So the goal for us, and on a day-to-day basis, is educating people on what that process looks like, what that calendar looks like, and then providing them with programming and options to get themselves better. Every kid is not the same, right? In the higher levels of baseball, pro baseball, college baseball, everybody is kind of on the same calendar. When we talk about high school and youth athletes, things are much different. Family situations are different. Kids play different sports. And so for us, day to day, we have to identify, hey, what options do people need? And then how do we provide them with those options that fit into their lives and their careers as young baseball players. How has your baseball career shaped your view on the game and how it should be taught? I really like this question because I've kind of had a baseball career on the playing and coaching side that spanned a lot of different talent levels, and different ways that the game works, right? As a player, when I was a kid, I was on, an incredible team. Many of those guys that I grew up playing with are still my best friends. Multiple of those guys were in my wedding, so on and so forth. So, that shaped me probably more than anything, because I went to the field loving the guys around me and understanding that winning was a byproduct of playing for each other, working hard for each other, holding each other accountable, having fun with each other. And I think I really hold that dear, because when we really look at it, like, baseball is a game. And most of these guys that we work with are not going to play professionally. A lot of them aren't going to play collegiately, although we do have a lot of guys that do. Um, but man, when you look back on those times, like that's what really sticks with you. And so I keep that near and dear to my heart. Um, on the flip side of that, I'm a player development junkie. I think, the ways that the game has evolved, the ways that we've learned to train players and to not train players over the last, 15, 20 years are incredibly, incredibly interesting to me. And so, while keeping that first point and the love of the game and the enjoyment of the game at the forefront, still finding ways to like maximize our potential and teach guys in the most cutting edge way we can and provide them with the most cutting edge environment we can. And I think the magic for us that we've always strived for is accomplishing both at the same time, providing those relationships for guys, providing those experiences for guys, but also providing them with the best tools, the best training, the best coaching that they can possibly get to achieve their goals. And that's always going to be, kind of our vision for the future. As a player, when I was a kid, I was not very good. I loved the game, but I was far less talented than most of my teammates. I went to my dad one time and said, "Hey, like, I suck." I probably wanted him to give me the pat on the shoulder and say, "It's okay, it's not your fault." And he said, "If you suck, go practice." So go get better. And he empowered me to go get better on my own. So I view, that as a huge part of our role too, is how can we help these guys to get better, obviously in our environment, but also to go get better on their own. The guys that really, really take leaps and bounds in this game are the ones that understand where they're deficient and can take those deficiencies, work on them, and turn them into, strengths. So that's how I kind of view the game being taught. The mental part of the game is a prominent part of the game. How did you approach the game, and how do you translate that to players you are developing? This is an area that, I am pretty passionate about as well, because I was very, very deficient in that area as a player. Um, Growing up, I had such a great group of guys around me in youth ball and in high school that, I always felt comfortable. I always felt at home. I felt like when I struggled, they had my back. I felt like when I played well, they were happy as hell for me. So, going through high school, the mental game was relatively simple. I had some ups and downs and struggled as a younger player and had to kind of fight through adversity and just get better. But I always knew I had a lot of people in my corner. When I got to college, that all changed for me. I was on my own. I was not, one of the better players on the team anymore. I was in a new environment. And my mental game, it suffered. I had a coach who was very tough, would tell you how it was, would not sugarcoat things, and I had to learn to deal with that. I remember in college looking at the lineup card, and even if I wasn't in the lineup, I would look at where I sat on the list of reserves. And if I was down at the bottom, it would rip me up. If I was up near the top, I at least felt like, hey, I got a shot. And I rode that roller coaster a lot. So, as we teach our guys about the mental game, we really start with like in-game focuses and what strategies do you have to get over something bad that happens quickly so that when the game continues to move on, you can move on with it. We talk about release, refocus a lot. So finding a way to release the previous pitch and then refocus so that you're ready for the next pitch. But from a more general mental game standpoint, it's really just trying to impart on these guys that you got to stay the course, that there's going to be ups and downs, that success is never linear. You're going to have highs, you're going to have lows, but we're looking for the long-term trend and also just to control what you can control, right? You can't control where coach puts you on the lineup card, right? Or where he puts you in the lineup or how often you're in the lineup. What you can control is how am I preparing for this game? How am I training? How am I understanding where I need to get better and working on those things? And then having those conversations with coaches or trainers or whoever it may be. And if you know kind of where you stand and the things that you need to attack and how to attack them, hopefully that preparation breeds confidence when you're going out and performing. And then once the chips fall where they may, you reassess and you keep pressing forward. But controlling what you can control and having strategies to, move on from adversity, because it's going to be there in baseball. Are there any coaches or periods of time in your career that have impacted your coaching philosophies? For me, that's an enormous yes. I have been so fortunate to have a bunch of great coaches in my life, starting with my dad from, the moment I was born. My youth coach, Kermit Peterson, was a huge influence on me and just how he approached, our team and the game. And then two of my biggest mentors and influences are my high school coach, Steve Eaton, and my college coach, junior college coach, Scott Crampton. I've gotten the privilege of coaching with both of those guys. So not only did I see, what it was like to have a great coach from a player's perspective, but I also got to spend time with both of them on their staffs. And everything that those guys imparted on me as a young player and a young coach have carried through, things from discipline to organization to, having systems in place for development. All of those things have really formed the foundation of what Rogue Baseball is. And man, I can't thank those guys enough for what they poured into me as a player and what they continue to pour into me as a coach and a business owner and a husband and a father and all of those things. So, there was also times where I coached with or played for coaches that I didn't agree with what they did with, and that shaped me almost as much as the ones that I did agree with, right? I learned what not to do at times. Some of those things coming from those same individuals, right? And I said, well, he did it that way, but, I don't think I want to do things that way. So, I feel like I'm pretty fortunate that when I was a player, I was pretty observant of those things. And I think I deep down knew that coaching might be in my future. And so I kind of took notes on some of those things and had those conversations in my head and said, here's how I would do it, or here's how I think we should be doing it. And that served me well, as we've built Rogue. What specific skills do you provide that will enhance Rogue Baseball? I'm fortunate to lead the infield training here at Rogue. Outfield as well, but in the training setting, infield is the one that, gets the most traction. At the youth and amateur levels, the defense is the separator. The teams that can play good defense have a better shot to win than the teams that can't take care of the baseball and make routine plays. Hitting and pitching are always going to be the sexy ones, and they're always going to be the areas, in the training environment, especially indoors, that people gravitate to. And I worked in professional baseball. It was all about hitting and pitching, and rightfully so, right? That's the core of the game. But for young players, especially, like, learning that defense matters, number one, and defense, like, there's a lot that goes into being a great defender. Giving that perspective is something that I'm really passionate about providing within our company. When I run an infield session, it's not just kind of hitting ground balls and talking about a specific fundamental, right? My goal is always to help youth and high school baseball players and infielders develop as wide-ranging a toolbox as they possibly can have. The game throws so many different variables at you as a defender that if you can only execute a couple of those things, it's going to be tough sledding for you. But the guys that are able to do a bunch of different things well and have a lot of versatility in their game, those are the defenders that end up scaling and playing at higher levels. So for me, like, when I'm working with infielders, that's the focus. And I think it's such an important area that is kind of underutilized from, a training standpoint. And, I'm glad that I'm able to fill that role within our company. Describe the kind of player you are looking for. There's a lot of things that go into a great baseball player. We talk about an acronym called TAG: tools, actions, and game ability. Tools being the things you can measure, right? Physical, strong, in the weight room. Okay, bat speed, velocity, running speed. All the things that you can look at a scouting report, you can look at a showcase sheet and see this guy does well. The second part of that is actions, right? You need to be able to move well. Guy with a good swing has a better shot to hit. Guy with good mechanics on the mound has a better shot to be consistent throwing strikes. Guy with good footwork and hands in the infield is a guy that, is going to be more consistent generally, right? If you're not a good mover, at some point that's going to catch up to you. And so that's the actions piece. And then game ability, and that's just being a ball player. That's understanding situations. That's taking that really good bat speed and that really pretty swing and understanding what pitches you should swing at and what pitches you shouldn't swing at, right? That's being a great base runner, understanding that here's my read off the bat, here's the game situation, here's how I should react to that ball. Game ability is kind of that all-encompassing ball playerness. And you get some guys that, check one box and they're just okay, right? The guys that check two boxes are pretty good players, right? And the guys that check all three of those boxes, tools, actions, and game ability, are the ones that are special. Those are the guys that are top level at the high school level, go compete for college jobs as freshmen, okay, and hopefully move on from there. So that's how we try and portray baseball players to young players and families, is that our goal is to try and develop all three of those. And if you've got those to some degree, that's the kind of player we're looking for. You don't always have those, and that's our job to help get you those, so that when coaches are looking at you, they're seeing all three of those things. What kinds of services and technology are provided that will allow maximum growth? Yeah, for us, we try and provide the most value that we possibly can to all of our players. Starting with the tools and the facility. Obviously, the environment that we create is kind of what's going to shape what we're able to do. We take a lot of pride in having the things that we do. We've got some of the really high-end stuff like TrackMan. If you're a pitcher working to develop his arsenal, we've got the ability to tell you what your arsenal looks like and what needs to develop. Hitters, if you're looking to gain bat speed, Blast Motion is a great tool. If you're looking to hit the ball harder, we can evaluate where you're at in terms of exit velocity, but also the deeper levels of that, right? Like, why is your exit velocity where it is? What pitches do you hit hard? What pitches don't you hit hard? Things of that nature. So, having those tools to help guide us as coaches, that's the beautiful part of this game in 2026, is that we don't just have to guess as coaches that you need bat speed improvements. We can measure it, and then we can track it. One of my favorite sayings is measurement is motivation. And so when a player comes in and he starts at a starting point and then he works and works and works and sees that number go up, that's so motivating for that guy to continue putting in that work. And that's what we're looking to foster here. Another tool we have is the Spinball iPitch machine. And I'm sure Jordan talked about that. That, a lot of times, I say this a lot, that's one of the best tools we have, if not the best, because it allows hitters to train like you train in the game, like you play in the game. If you're hitting off a machine and a fastball is coming, like, the hard part of hitting is already kind of taken care of, even if you do have some good velo going. But with our spin ball, if you're able to get in there and face a fastball and then not know if the next pitch is going to be a fastball or not, like, that is hitting, right? And we provide that to our guys in our environment so that they're facing game-like challenges in practice, so that when they get in the game, it's not foreign to them. You can play a lot of games, but you're still not going to maximize the reps like you would, if you're able to utilize something like that on a daily basis. Service-wise, we provide a little bit of everything from, big all-encompassing memberships that allow players to come in as much as they want and utilize our entire staff and facility, to kind of mid-tier stuff where it might just be one specific skill that they're working to develop or they want to work on with us, all the way down to individual lessons. For us with young guys, individual lessons are great ways to introduce them to the topics, introduce them to how we train, get more hands-on, get more one-on-one time. When you're younger, you need a little bit more of that, but our goal is always to try and scale guys from being a one-on-one lesson kid to a guy that can then work into some of our group work stuff where you're working with other players. It's a little bit more self-guided, right? Being self-guided is so important in baseball because you're the only one that's there for every rep that you take. So we want to foster being self-guided in how we provide training. And then you get those guys that are all in, and we have to kick them out of here every night because they spend so much time training with us. So, that's kind of the progression. And again, there's no clean kind of bucket where everybody fits. Everybody has different goals. Everybody has different things going on, and so we want to make sure that we can provide something for everybody. What is more important, buy-in from the staff or buy-in from the players? It's all about the player. That's why we do this. So if the player isn't bought in, none of it matters. Um, that said, like if our staff is not bought into how we train athletes, what our goals are, some of the day-to-day and logistical things that we do, then the system doesn't provide the player with, the option to be bought in. So, I don't know if one of them's more important than the other. I think it's a unit, and as the staff becomes more bought in, and we have a consistent way in how we do things, it allows the player to be more bought in. If they feel like everything is random, one guy is a good coach, the other guy is not a good coach, one guy coaches in a way I like, the other guy is the opposite of that, it's going to be really hard for that player to trust the system and trust the ways that we develop. And so, the buy-in from the players really builds on the buy-in and the growth of the coaching staff. What impact are you looking to make on a player? Impact is the perfect word. That's all we're looking to do, is make an impact. They're not going to remember their stats. They're not going to remember the wins and losses specifically, in 20 years. But the impact that we have the opportunity as coaches to have on these guys is enormous. I've seen it said that a coach will impact more people in a year than a normal person will impact in their entire lifetime. And, that's something that on the hard days when you're gassed and you're running ragged in the summer, I really try and take to heart. Like, even when I think I'm maybe not, getting through to these guys, or what we're doing is a little bit monotonous, like the impact that we have as coaches is really enormous. And I can speak to that through the coaches that I've had and the impact that they had on me. But the impact I'm trying to have on guys is just to be a positive presence in their life. Someone that both cares about them, right, and wants them to succeed, and that they know is in their corner, but within that also holds them accountable, tells them how it is, doesn't sugarcoat things, right? And I think a lot of times getting reamed is an impact that can kind of carry long beyond your playing days, right? When you remember that, ooh, I had a coach that really held me accountable for wearing the right hat or being on time. Little things that seem trivial, by themselves, but when you look at them as a long-term approach to life, like they stick, right? Especially the being on time piece. Like, that's an easy one. If we can hold guys accountable for that, they're not the guys showing up late for work every day when they're 30 years old. Obviously, on the baseball side, we want to make guys, as good a baseball player as we possibly can. So giving them good information, coaching them correctly in baseball is a really important part, especially for the very talented and the very driven guys that could take this game, farther down the road. But in general, the impact that we have is using baseball as a vehicle to, help them become better young men. What is your approach when it comes to helping an athlete get to that next level? I think that's the beauty of what we do here at Rogue. We have the opportunity to work with players that are at every level. We're working with youth players that are getting ready to go play high school baseball. We're working with high school players that want to go play college baseball. And we're working with college players that have aspirations to play professionally. I think across the board there, the approach to helping them get to that next level is showing them what that next level looks like. And there's a couple different ways we can do that. Number one is just sharing information with them and saying, look, if you want to play at this level, you want to play at the Division I level, the average Division I pitcher throws this hard, right? The average Division I baseball player is this size, right? All of the different measurables. I think that's a really easy place to start, because if you're way, way, way off of that, like, it gives you perspective, and it either gives you something to strive for, or it helps reset your expectations to where you want to go. The other part is just like teaching them things that are going to scale, right? When you're a young hitter, putting the ball on the ground every play probably gets you on base a lot, right? I know it gets you on base a lot because the fielders at the 10U level are not as adept as fielders at the higher levels. So if we teach a guy, hey, hit it on the ground so you can get on base, right? Like that's good for now, but down the road, if they're a guy that can only hit it on the ground, they're going to be jogging back to the dugout more times than not. So trying to, you know, shoot that gap, right? We obviously don't want a 10-year-old that's flying out every time and not having any fun because he's not having any success, right? But we also don't want that ground ball kid. So, you know, that example is easy. It's we want to hit hard line drives. Those scale from the youth level to the high school level to the college level and beyond. And then providing them with skills that, you know, foster athleticism too. I think it's really easy with young players, you know, high school, college even, okay, but definitely youth, to provide them with like 2 or 3 things to master and then telling them, yeah, you mastered those simple things and, you know, you're good. But like when you get to the next level, you have to master more than 2 or 3 things, right? You have to be adaptable. You have to be athletic. You know, in my context, like we can have guys shuffle, throw, and follow all day long, which we do have those things built into our systems. But at the same time, I also need them to learn how to throw with a jump and throw with a spin, right? And do things that are athletic so that when they get into the game and they're forced to do those things and move as an athlete, they're able to do it. So it's a really fine line, you know, especially when you're talking about young players and, you know, motivation to play at the next level. When you get a kid that's motivated to play in college like beyond belief, it's really easy because you just kind of give him the roadmap and he helps follow it. But when you get the guy that needs more guidance and you get the guy that's not quite sure like if he's good enough or if he loves it enough, you have to kind of find the ebbs and flows and you have to let him experience success, but you also got to tell him like, hey, this is what's going to work or not going to work at the level that you're looking to get to. What are you most grateful for when it comes to baseball and coaching? This one's going to get me emotional because I'm just super, super grateful to get to do baseball every day. I fell in love with the game when I was a little kid. My dad played college baseball. It was kind of, you know, not forced upon us, but we spent a lot of time watching ball games and at ball fields, and you know, I had such great experiences as a kid with baseball because of my teammates, because of my coaches, because of the people I was around, and I think that for me has just like burned, you know, this game into my soul, and you know, I'm just so grateful to be able to like pay it forward, right, and be able to provide guys with hopefully an environment that's close to that. You know, I it's always something that I strive for is, you know, when guys come play for us or after they leave us, they're like, man, like that was good stuff. Like I loved being around. Those guys cared about me. And I'm grateful to be in a position to have that impact on young people. I think, you know, there's such a need for it today. I think not every environment where young people spend their time are ideal for that, right? Like school is obviously important, but not every kid wants to be in math class. Not every kid wants to be in history class. Pretty much every kid that comes here at least wants to be playing baseball to some degree. And so if we can use that to help have that impact, you know, I'm extremely grateful for that platform. I'm also just grateful for the guys that we have around. You know, at the very beginning of this thing, you know, I pretty much did everything myself. And it worked for a minute, but it would not work now. So having the staff that we do, having the coaches that we do, that help me, you know, make this thing a reality every day, there's no replacement for that. And then the other thing I'm grateful for is my wife and my kids who allow me to do this. You know, the baseball lifestyle, even here kind of in the local setting, is hard. Baseball happens at specific times, typically nights and weekends, right? And those are kind of kind of designated family times in the real world. And so my wife, understanding that my passion for this is kind of at my core, has been, a freaking rock star in terms of holding down the fort and allowing me to do this and impact all these other kids, especially as we've had our own kids. I've heard a lot of people say, like, I don't want to spend time with other people's kids. And obviously I love spending time with my kids, but working with other people's kids, like, still lights me up even after having my own kids. So, again, I can't thank her enough. I wouldn't be able to do this without her support. And, that's important. Adapting to the different players that are coming through can be challenging. Where do you look to continue to learn as a coach and mentor, or is it mainly experience based? I think experience has a lot to do with it. You have to go through coaching a team, working with players, understanding their motivations, understanding what makes them tick. And it's hard to do that right off the street. That's an area where when we try and train our coaches, we can't replicate that very well, and we kind of have to sit back and say, hey, you got to learn some of this stuff on your own. But personally, as a coach and a mentor, I'm always just looking for ways to connect with the players, right? What are they into? What are they motivated by? I think over the last couple of years, the crusty surface of my old school thoughts have chipped away a little bit in some of the little things, right? Having music around the cages when we're taking batting practice, right? Because that just makes them feel better, right? It makes them feel like, hey, this is fun, this is enjoyable, I'm ready to go, and so that's the areas where I really work to connect with guys, right? Try and know a little bit more about their music and who the artists are and what movies they're watching and what video games they're playing. That way we can at least like have a starting point to, hey, did you catch this last night, or what's your score on this game, or whatever it is. Just that little entry point, then we can start getting into the deeper stuff and where the experience can help me. But if they think that you're some old curmudgeon that doesn't care about what they care about, like, that door is never going to open up. What makes Rogue the premier baseball program in Colorado? We're the premier program because we try and approach it like a true program, right? There's organizations and there's facilities, and again, there's good people, those places, but everything's kind of scattered, right? And so for us, like, the goal is we want to create a program that is cohesive, that fits together, right? And when you walk through the door, it doesn't feel like, well, I'm getting something different here and something different there. It's, I'm here and this is what this group of coaches believes, and here's how I'm going to be trained. It's easy to slap a logo on and roll out there and feel like you're really good because of the logo that you've got on. But when it really comes down to it, like, do you have a program that's helping you get better, that's tracking if you are getting better, that has strategies to help you get better, and then are you better at the end of it? And within that, are you having great experiences? Do you have coaches that really care about you as a person first, okay, not just a baseball player who's going to stroke their ego? All of those things are what we strive for at Rogue. And are we perfect? Of course not. And we're constantly developing, we're constantly trying to make things better. But the community and the feeling of, hey, I'm an important person in this program, is the starting point. And I'm not just a number to fill a team to make money. That's what we hang our hat on, and that's what we're waking up every morning trying to accomplish. And it's a process for sure. But, man, when you look at us, 11 years ago versus today, like, we're much, much farther along in that aspect than we were when we started. Infield scenario. A high school infielder is struggling to make routine plays in games and is losing playing time because of it. What is the general process for the athlete to reach his goal? I always say infield and ground balls are like snowflakes. Like, every single one is just a little bit different. And so for me, the general process is, hey, here's some options for you. Let's start playing around with those options. And then obviously taking their feedback, right? Hey, I'm having a hard time like picking the right hop. Okay, like, maybe we need to focus on a little bit more hop recognition, right? hey, I feel like my feet are getting stuck. Okay, maybe we need to work on footwork timing and different ways that we can move our feet to keep them moving through or with the baseball. So it's taking kind of their feedback from what they're feeling, but also trying to give them, a broader view of some of the things that they can do to get more consistent. Ask before you tell is something that I've really tried to buy into over my last several years as a coach and an instructor, because I don't know all the context, especially in this situation where I'm not there at their games. I'm not seeing all the ground balls that they're getting in practice. So I've got to learn from them far before I can start dumping a bunch of information on them. But again, at the same time, I've got some pillars and I've got some things that through experience I've seen work with players at all levels of baseball that they probably need to know sooner rather than later. So it's definitely a dance there between what are they giving me and what am I giving them. And that dance is really what we do as coaches, and some guys need us to lead more. And some guys are able to lead that dance a little bit more themselves, and we can just kind of, pipe in with little things and let them take it and run with it. The constant flow of athletes and even the transfer portal culture in college sports, change is inevitable. How do you keep up with the changes in culture on and off the field? This is an interesting question. The old school, coach in me doesn't love that guys feel like they can/need to bounce between places all the time, that there's always something better, the grass is always greener. I learned as a player, like I got the most out of my career like sticking through some hard times, and I feel like I grew as a person because of that, and saw some benefits at the end of it, and they were really powerful then. So that part is hard for me. At the same time, like, it's your career and you only get one of them. And so if you feel like what you're getting is not good enough and there's something better, it's your prerogative to go do that. I think for us as a program, making sure that our players are educated on our process, we believe that our process is better than pretty much anybody else's process in this area. And so, getting them to understand why is a big part of why we're doing this interview, to be honest with you, right? To share more information. Um, but, as a general thing, you just have to recruit your own players. You have to provide an environment where they want to show up to and they can't see themselves leaving, right? If you provide an environment that's kind of stock and it's what everybody else does, they're going to feel like, okay, well, if I go over there, I'm going to get the same thing, if not better than I got here, so I should go try. But if we provide an environment, provide tools, provide coaching, that guys feel like, man, like it's going to be hard to replicate this. This was awesome. Um, that's the goal. That's the job. And I think that goes all the way up, It goes all the way up to the big leagues. If you got a guy that's a free agent, did he have a good experience with you coming up, and into his major league years to want to sign that free agent contract with you? College coaches, as we mentioned, the transfer portal, like it's wide open. So did you provide them enough there where they feel like they'd be missing out if they left? And then down to us, following in those footsteps. It's a free market and people have their choices and their options, and we want to make sure that we're always at the forefront of their mind because of what they experienced. I'm really fortunate to be able to run Rogue Baseball with a bunch of guys that are as passionate as I am about the game, as passionate as I am about player development. We've got a group of guys that gets it, right? And I think that's where it starts, is at the coaching, or with the coaching, and having everybody on the same page. Obviously, everybody's got different backgrounds, different upbringings, different ways they were coached by their coaches. But this group here does a tremendous job of, working together and teaching the game in a similar way in each of the different areas.